We didn't trade goods, we traded ammo. And if you saw something you thought you needed, you went out and you took the damn thing. You confiscated it, you colonized it, you expanded into empire. And those empires fought over resources and access and markets. Those fights brought us wars, which culminated into World War II. Now, at the end of that conflict, the Americans drew their allies together and said, we're gonna try something new this time. Instead of everyone having a separate, sequestered imperial network, everything's going to be pooled. The US Navy, the only one of size to survive the war, will patrol the global oceans for everyone so that anyone can go anywhere at any time, purchase any raw commodity, ship it home, metabolize it into a finished good, and then re-export it for hard currency. There's just one catch. You got to be on our side. The Americans bribed up an alliance to fight the Cold War, and that gave us this map. The deep blue are the countries the Americans cared about before the conflict, the front, the backyard. The medium blue, those are the new allies in this new global order, the first global order, the first era of international trade. Orange are the other guys. We don't like to talk about them in this country. And light blue is the field of competition. Everything mattered every day. The Americans could never deny battle. But then one idle Tuesday, in the very definition of pent-up demand, the Germans had a party and it was all over. And it had never occurred to the Americans that they might actually win. We were convinced that the only way that this could go down is with the end of the world. Well, we didn't think about the next day. And as a result, our view of the world almost overnight changed. And there's a lot of gray up there. A lot of places Americans just don't have a firm opinion. Now, the person who was in charge at the moment that the wall fell was George Herbert Walker Bush, who from a foreign policy point of view is arguably the best president that this country's ever had. He certainly had the expertise. Ran the CIA, vice president, served in the House of Representatives, ambassador to China, ran the Office of Budget. He was the right person in the right time with the right mindset and the right skill set, so of course we voted him out of office and we started down the parade of morons. Bill Clinton, smart dude, arguably the most intelligent president we've had since Jefferson, but he had a, how should we say this, an ADD issue. He also wasn't interested in foreign affairs. He saw himself as a domestic renewal leader. And so when he realized that he had a summit the following day, he would call up the CIA, he'd call up the State Department desk officers, and they'd come over to the White House, and he'd kind of cram for the summit like he was back in college and preparing for a test. He was a millennial before his time, if you will. And he would hit it out of the park every time. He was just that good in small group settings. Relations would soar for a day because there was never any follow-up. And we had W, let's call it what it was. A monochromatic foreign policy that dealt with one issue in one region and to hell with everything else. Obama comes in, and Obama had a very strange personality quirk for a world leader. He hates people. No American president went to Congress fewer times, met with his own cabinet secretaries fewer times, met with his own inner circle fewer times, met with his own party allies fewer times than Barack Obama. Well, that's not quite true. There's one exception. You guys remember William Harrison? He caught pneumonia during his inaugural speech and then died on day 30. Obama beats him, but nobody else. So for the 24 years of these three administrations, we only had about 1 year of foreign policy. Do you guys remember the 1,000 points of light, the New World Order? That was George Herbert Walker Bush's attempt to get Americans to have a conversation with themselves about what sort of world they wanted to live in. And we punished him for it. And just as making a bad decision can have consequences for decades, so can refusing to make a decision at all. The glory and the horror of Donald Trump is that at his core, he's got a really good point. The strategic order the Americans created to fight the Cold War no longer serves American strategic needs. It hasn't since the wall fell. But it was never supposed to serve American economic needs. America subsidizes the global system The global system fights the Soviets. That was the deal. We never invested our economy in it. And as a percent of GDP, the United States remains the least involved economy in the world. We are not a trading power. We never have been. So the Americans can walk away from the global system and be fine. And that's exactly what we're doing. Raises the question, if the Americans are going to drop the mantle of leadership, is there anyone out there who can step up and displace the Americans? Well, you need two things. First, you have to be able to provide global security on the ocean. About 85% of all international trade travels the ocean blue. It's got to be protected. Let's look at that. Now, on the right here, we have what's called a jump carrier. And on the left, we have what's called a supercarrier. On the deep blue sea, without any support from land-based assets, it takes 8 of those to fight off one of these. Now, there are 21 of these in the world. 11 of them are American flagged. There are 11 of these in the world. They are all American flagged. The combined navies of the rest of the planet have about 4% the long-range fire capacity of the American Navy today. And at current rates of global naval build-out, the combined navies of the rest of the world will roughly equal the United States in the year 2240. As an American, I don't lose a lot of sleep over this. By the way, the Chinese have 2 of these. One used to be a casino. The other one is a clone of the one that used to be a casino. Context. Second, consumption, because people have to buy this stuff, right? This is what we call a standard demographic pyramid. You've got children at the bottom, young adults, mature adults, retirees at the top, men on one side, women on the other. This is what we call a consumption-led demographic. Because whenever you've got a big bulge in your population structure below roughly age 40, it's all about the spending. Raising kids, going to college, buying cars, buying houses, smoking pot, spend. Wow, we're in California. I figured that would work. Well, when American political and economic leaders look at a demographic like Mexico, we like what we see. 2 big reasons. Number one, all those young people consuming, upwardly mobile, they absorb a lot of goods. Second, young people, writ large, don't have the expertise to be too high value added. So the Mexican workforce tends to be very good at low to mid-end manufacturing and assembly. That's not what the US is competitive in. We do design, we do high-end. So the propensity for trade, the opportunities are huge. Mexico became America's largest trading partner last year. It's a position they will not give up in our lives. You may have noticed that the Trump administration's rhetoric on Mexico has evolved quite a bit in the last 3 years. It started with how the Mexicans are cheating us on trade, but that didn't resonate, not with the business community, not with Trump's core supporters. So it eventually evolved into the current issue with immigration and identity. This is a partner. And this is not. Canada had a baby bust 45 years ago that they have yet to recover from. That means they've got a huge chunk of population in their 50s and early 60s, people who have been in their jobs for 20, 30, 40 years. Very high value added, very highly skilled, but they're overpopulated in that segment, which has pushed down the relative cost of Canadian high-skilled labor. And because there aren't a lot of young Canadians, there aren't enough people there to consume what is produced. It has to be exported. 80%